Good evening. This is Maestro with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we've got another full Faction War series from the February Faction War event hosted by Impregnable. Our first player on the Chaos side is going to be Nimmsi, playing as the Chaos Lord, a durable and destructive commander who cannot be suppressed and walks through cover and all that. Next up, we're going to have Noisy playing as Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer, a spell-casting and control hero. Next up is going to be DanielGrushin playing as yet another Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer, this one with a more traditional skin. And their opponents are going to be a bunch of Eldar, led by Acey. Maybe not necessarily led, but that's the first player we're going to talk about. Acey playing as the teleporting Warp Spider Exarch, a high mobility harassment commander. Next up, we're going to have Fathom playing as the Eldar Farseer, a support hero with buffs and heals. And finally, we're going to have Legionator playing as the Eldar Warlock, a melee hero who can also become a spellcaster. And this first game right here, if I didn't already say it, is going to be on Quest Redemption. It's actually amazing how many new maps that are new to me that I am seeing here. So, Doom Bolts are going to go in from one Chaos Sorcerer, but the Heretics are going to be forced off by all that range fire from these Double Dire Avengers. Double Dire Avengers, meanwhile, have not lost a single model, which is actually not terribly uncommon for when a squad does get hit with Doom Bolts. Just something about the way Doom Bolts works. It just can do a huge amount of damage, but it's not very good at actually killing models unless the squad itself is that's hitting it or that's getting hit is actually already really close to dying. Meanwhile, on this side, this squad of Chaos Space Marines going to be in trouble. Warp Spider Exarch already tied them up in melee, and then there was the approach by the Banshees. Some Doom Bolts kind of scared off this squad of Howling Banshees, though, having lost a model. Has upgraded to the aspect of fleetness. Quick upgrade on that. And we're seeing from our Chaos players that they are choosing not to get second Heretic squads. Many of them, well, two of our players getting second Chaos Space Marine squads. Noisy going for the Havoc, which I think that actually makes quite a bit of sense. I'm actually very surprised not to see more Havocs from our players here, although the Havoc can be a little bit tough to use effectively against the Warp Spider Exarch. My god, a squad of Heretics nearly dying in that engagement, and a squad of Howling Banshees going to be actually killing two models on that Chaos Space Marine squad. Oh no, another squad of Chaos Space Marines also in trouble. Retreats. I'm actually really surprised that was just a full-on retreat by that. Oh, I'd see. They were actually in the Havoc firing arc, I think. I was surprised to see them retreat there without at least attempting to get another Chaos Space Marine model. Meanwhile, Chaos Heretics will just walk into the firing arc of a Guardian Weapon Team, but the Guardian Weapon Team will be disrupted. Only 2 Doom Bolts go in. Strangely, it's weird to see how that ability was canceled like that. Normally, the normal volley is a 3-bolt volley, and if you have... wow, I can't believe I don't know this, and I'm forgetting this detail about my main character. But I'm pretty sure, basically, if you have 100 energy, it will shoot out another 3 Doom Bolts. I believe the way that technically works, or the way it's worded, is that if you have a certain amount of energy left over, you shoot out another volley. But the way it effectively works is if you have 100 energy or more when you cast it. More grenades are going to go in on another Guardian Weapon Team, but that Grenade Launcher Heretic has been suppressed. Of course, suppression doesn't stop abilities from being used, and here the Havoc is trying to compete with this Guardian Weapon Team. A Guardian Weapon Team compared to the Havoc does do more damage, and it actually does seem to be getting the edge of the suppression anyway. Oh, Guardian, I guess the Havoc wasn't actually set up in that direction, or was it? Doesn't matter anyway. Warp Spider Exarch will tie it up. Grenade's going to go in, but going to be missing. Here is that Infiltration Worship from the Sorcerer. Infiltration Worship is very interesting, in my opinion, the most interesting kind of Chaos Worship. Oh, this is scary. Grenades, they're just going to step on that grenade, but they do scare off both squads of Dire Avengers. Actually, a little surprised to see those Dire Avengers get scared off so easily when they did get the grenade, actually landing quite easily on that squad of Heretics. Meanwhile, we are going to see the Warlock upgraded with the Witchblade of Kurnos. Often nice against jump units, because you deny them the energy of a potential second jump, especially if that second jump is going to be intended to use as an escape rather than an initiation. And unfortunately, we're just going to see the Dire Avengers get into melee with the Chaos Space Marines. Nimmsi... Okay, we do have the Havoc finally set up, but this comes from Noisy. So Nimmsi doesn't seem to have his Heretics positioned in a way so that they can act as a screen against those Howling Banshees. Meanwhile, the Chaos Raptors try to get into range of this Guardian Weapon team, but they're getting to the point where, yeah, they're going to risk losing the squad entirely if he just charges head-on like that, with setup teams doing more damage the closer you get to them. So normally they're usually used at a distance where their damage is actually pretty light, but the closer you get, the more damage they do. We're going to see a back cap by the Howling Banshees. This one upgraded with the aspect of strength on the Chaos Space Marine natural victory point. Meanwhile, oh dear, we're going to see some squads dying here. Squad of Dire Avengers does go down. Looks like it might have even been the squad's own grenade that was partially responsible. And although that Warlock can definitely do a lot of damage to those Chaos Space Marines, he was just taking too much damage on the approach, especially given that both of these squads of Chaos Space Marines have been upgraded with Eternal War. What? I just love that voice line, that what? So our Chaos players are going to be taking control of the field for the moment, or so it seems. Finally, we're going to see some response by the Howling Banshees. Howling Banshees not choosing to engage. Instead, oh wow, they tried to finish the cap, but then just got hesitant on finishing the cap. We're going to see some attempted force melee and retreat. Could get a model, and indeed it does. Actually got two. That's some really good value off of those Eternal War Chaos Space Marines in retreat. I don't know about this approach from the Farseer all by herself. Here are the Guardian Weapons teams to support her, but I feel the support is somewhat late. She's already getting focused down, and yeah, she's a little too far ahead of the support of those Guardian Weapons teams. They should really be either... Well, I was going to say move them in closer, really move them in, or pull the Farseer back until they can get in. But there is a flank by a squad of Heretics. Did a lot of damage to one of those Guardian Weapon teams, and it will retreat. But the Heretic squad itself is also going to have to retreat. So I'm not sure, yeah, that approach by the Farseer I don't feel like really achieved that much. I'd say the most it really achieved is it stalled out the recap by the Chaos players on their natural victory point. Meanwhile, here is the Warlock again. He's got that Merciless Witchblade, trying to use that ranged knockback, that passive ranged knockback that you get from equipping the Merciless Witchblade. And this Sorcerer needs to be very careful. Interesting to see him go for the Demon Armor. But I think it will have a lot of use against all these Guardian Weapon teams, because every single Eldar player has a Guardian Weapon team. Like in this situation, it would work out really well. But the grenades are going to be enough to scare out the Guardian Weapon team, and that's probably just going to be an immediate retreat, yeah, just to prevent, I was going to say to prevent a mono loss, but then one just happened. Meanwhile, on this side, Chaos Lord is dead, and we are going to see a rather slow power bash by these understrength. Actually, no, I was going to say understrength. I thought they were understrength because they didn't have much health, but actually it looks like, okay, this squad of Dire Avengers is understrength, only 4 out of 6 models. They get the destruction on the power node and actually going to choose to cap it, try to take back this generator, which actually was built by Eldar players, although it was in possession of Nimmsi. So Falcon is now out on the field. We're in Tier 2 for, actually, yeah, every single player. Falcon from Legionator, Wraithlord for Acey, Wraithlord also coming for Fathom. While we do have not quite as many Tier 2 purchases for our Chaos players, Nimmsi only with the Plague Marines, which is interesting just as like as your first Tier 2 purchase with Plague Marines. They are an anti-vehicle unit. They've never exactly been a stellar one. They're rather low in terms of DPS. They're also kind of slow, and they don't do much other than anti-vehicle, which they're arguably not even that great at. But they're just quite simply what Chaos players have in Tier 2. They're just an option. Will get a shot. That did, I was going to say come out from infiltration, but no. Oh man, I wish the Havoc had actually been targeting the Falcon there. If the Havoc had been targeting the Falcon there, that actually could have been a kill on the Falcon. But what's going to be a kill is that kill on the Havocs. I'm pretty sure that was a squad of Havocs that went down by those Howling Banshees. Howling Banshees in melee with Havocs is definitely really bad news for Havocs. This has looked like it's going to be really bad news for our Chaos players. Sorcerer just kind of standing around. I think the positioning is massively favoring our Eldar players, and I think we just need to see retreats all around from Chaos before they lose any more. Like, even this squad of Plague Marines right here lost a model rather unnecessarily. Yeah, just full retreat. I don't know if the Raptors get out of here. I don't think they do. If they do, it's pretty lucky. Doom has been cast on them, but there isn't really a strong source of damage on them either. So, except for that teleporting Warp Spider XR getting in and securing that kill. That has always been one of the really powerful things about the Warp Spider XR and why teleportation can be so powerful in this game. Meanwhile, Warp Spider Squad in a huge amount of trouble, taking way too much damage from some Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. There is a squad of, yes, here is that squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines along with the Plague Marines. So we've also got Plague Marines from DanielGrushin. And how long has Nimmsi's Chaos Lord been dead here? 2-to-1 cap for the Eldar, but they do have a victory point deficit at the moment. I think this should be a fairly successful power bash by, who is this? Is this Noisy? No, this is DanielGrushin. Oh yeah, look at that. So using the Demon armor, oh my god, what is the word? Demon armor, using that to break suppression, actually nearly kills the Guardian weapon team. So that was pretty well done. That gets him another generator. At this time, though, it's time to retreat. It's time to retreat. I'm actually worried that that retreat might not have been early enough. We could still... Alright, he's not going to lose a squad, and actually it looks like he retreated just barely in time. But any later than that, I think he would have been in serious trouble. So well done by DanielGrushin. I actually, certainly in my own experience of playing the Sorcerer, the Demon armor was definitely the armor war gear that I had purchased the least. But, I mean, of course, I think it does have uses, and I think we're seeing some very good uses of that. In fact, I've liked a lot of these uses of support abilities that offer resistance to range damage and suppression, as I've seen from a lot of support Force Commander players. So here is that counter bash. I really don't like that Dark Flames at all. I think, like, I try not to roast people too hard, especially because at this point these players are undoubtedly a lot better than me, with them actually probably playing and me not playing that much. But that was an awful Dark Flames. Like, it was actually awful. Because Dark Flames is not that great to begin with by itself, and using it on a squad that's right next to a Falcon so that they can just get in it denies so much of the value. So I just actually really intensely dislike that. So we are seeing more of the use out of that Demon armor. But it does still feel like this is still kind of a lost fight for our Chaos player in this particular moment. Heretics are probably going to need to go. They're a little too far forward. Doom has been used on the Chaos Space Marines, and the Falcon is also just laying in fire on the Plague Marines. Plague Marines will take one shot. They infiltrate, so there's one shot by the Plague Marines, but the Plague Marines themselves is not going to be enough to take on this Falcon. Scares off both squad of Warp Spiders, though. As strong as Warp Spiders are, they should lose to a squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. Attempted Warp Throw by the Warlock, but no dice on that one. They did retreat out of there in time. And the double Falcons from the Eldar actually proven to be really, really threatening. Despite the victory point deficit for the Eldar players, it really does feel like the momentum of the game is completely in their favor, until I just totally cast or curse them right there with the death of that Wraith Lord, which also means that I'm pretty sure they had another Wraith Lord that they lost, but the Falcons are doing great. That's what's important. And this is DanielGrushin with another near wipe on the Guardian weapon team. So he's playing as a ranged blob, and that Warlock just going in way too deep by himself. He's kind of playing ranged blob Sorcerer with the support of that Demon armor. I actually really like this style of play. He's also going for kill attempts with the Route of Warpfire, using that directional ability to push units toward his own units, push enemy units toward him. Almost kind of like a mini warp throw from a Warlock, although this one also does damage by itself. Havoc will be set up here, just going to bash this power node until a more desirable target comes into range. Khorne Dreadnought for Noisy. Often known, despite being a Khorne Dreadnought, kind of known for the synergy it has with the Sorcerer because it can be Oh no! Oh no, Noisy, what did you do? my god. That was funny. Anyway, Howling Banshees with the aspect of fleetness, taking a lot of damage, kind of leading the charge here. Meanwhile, Warlock with the Bright Lance, sorry, not Warlock, Wraithlord with the Bright Lance, gonna be in trouble. Luckily for the Wraithlord, we know that, what's it called? Blood Rage. Blood Rage. We know that Blood Rage is on cooldown, so it doesn't quite have that in its favor, but it looks like it's still going quite well, except that's actually really bad for the Havocs. Looks like the Howling Banshees there actually kind of like stutter-stepped or something. They kind of broke their chase on the Havocs. Otherwise, that could have been a wipe on the Havocs. 2 models were killed. Chaos Corn Dreadnought is... What is it doing? Oh no, it could have had a kill on... Potentially a kill on the Wraithlord. Wraithlord's going to be dead anyway. DanielGrushin coming in clutch. Dreadnought also, I think, could have had a kill on this Guardian weapon team. Even though it's half health, Dreadnought does so much damage that I think it actually could have been a kill. Oh no, this should be a kill on the Dire Avenger squad though. Even just range fire. I mean, he could have forced melee if needed, but it wasn't even needed. So DanielGrushin making the plays at this point, playing that Chaos range blob. The Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines with their demonic plasma gun that the aspiring champion now gets. But we're going to need repairs, we're going to need heals. On this side of the map, Dire Avengers just slowly bashing this power node. And our Chaos players have taken control of the field, and in spite of me saying that I thought the Eldar players were doing so well, Chaos players kind of coming back into this game. And actually, you know, I shouldn't even say coming back into this game. It's actually just been pretty even, with just a few swings each way. There's that push and pull. Blood for the Blood God. We saw someone sacrificed to try to deal with this Squad of Seer Council. Squad of Seer Council actually now in a huge amount of trouble. Like, real talk, they really are in a huge amount of trouble. They're lucky to still... Okay, now they're down to 3 out of 5 models. If anything, lucky they didn't lose more from that. They were in so deep. Warp Spider Exarch is also in kind of deep, and he just barely gets out alive. So Predator is out on the field, and that's going to be a little bit of trouble for the Falcons. Although the Falcons should... Realistically, actually, Falcons should not do well against the Predator at all. I'm not even seeing Refractor Field upgrades. Actually, I don't think they're called Refractor Fields, but effectively they are just the energy bubbles. We'll just call them that, just a generic name. Would definitely help them last a long time, but a Predator head-to-head should actually just straight up beat a Falcon. It's going to do way more anti-vehicle damage. Ooh, especially... Oh my god, this is such a great play. That should be a kill. No, he doesn't actually get a No, he does get a second shot. Yeah, Infiltrated Predator was great. The only problem now is it might actually be dead. Oh, wow. I felt it was such a great play to have the Predator shoot out of Infiltration because it's such massive burst damage to a vehicle. But, I mean, there was damage in response, and that took it down. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure something died from this Dreadnought. I could be wrong, or I could be right. And the Squad of Chaos Heretics in trouble. Warp Spiders, if they're paying attention, can finish them off. So can Howling Banshees. Howling Banshees going to town. Finish off the aspiring champion. All right, they finished them off, just like I asked. Dreadnought, at this point, unfortunately, going to get heavily kited by the remaining Falcon as well as the Fire Prism. We're going to see, yeah, I was going to say, that looked like the Warp Level used on the Dreadnought to get it out alive. So Dreadnought is still around. A lot of losses all around. Fathom only with 2 squads at this point. Noisy and DanielGrushin feel like they had losses too. Yeah, DanielGrushin lost a squad of Chaos Space Marines. This Fire Prism, does it get hit by another missile? No, it doesn't. So, the Fire Prism, the fact that the Fire Prism has taken damage has worried me a little bit. Ideally, part of the way a Fire Prism should work is that it has such extreme range that it shouldn't really be exposed to most other sources of anti-vehicle. Although, I will say off the top of my head, I don't know for sure if a Fire Prism outranges a Las Cannon Havoc. I'm not sure on that one. They're definitely comparable, and I'm going to, like, if I had to bet, if we were in Vegas, I actually would bet my money on a Fire Prism outranging a Las Cannon Havoc, but I will check the codex after this game. Well, maybe after all of these games. So Chaos, though, now Chaos are starting to run away with this game. They do have the double cap. Actually about to... No, I was going to say about to get the triple cap, but the natural victory point is over here. I mistook that for this requisition point that was being captured. Chaos Terminators now out on the field for DanielGrushin. Chaos Terminators... I would say... I mean, I actually really like Chaos Terminators in general, but I think I like them particularly against Eldar, where we mostly have units with infantry armor. Can be very good against things like the Warp Spiders. And we don't see any Dark Reapers from our Eldar players as well, which I would say is a little bit surprising. Obviously, in the Space Marine versus Eldar faction war, saw the effectiveness of those. That was interesting. Sigil of the Rift to teleport in a squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines toward vehicles, then retreating them immediately when they haven't even lost that many hit points. So I don't know what was going on there. I feel like maybe it was more intended for the Terminators or for the Plague Marines to go through the Sigil of the Rift, or the Warp Rift. What is the ability actually called? Really embarrassing to not know. Warp Rift. It is Warp Rift, so I did know it. Is this a Nurgle Predator? That's a Nurgle Predator. And that's an Imperial Abyss. Imperial Abyss definitely killed some squads there. Well, it killed models. I don't think it actually killed a squad. So that is kind of rough. I wouldn't say that that was a very high-value Imperial Abyss. Oh, look at that. That model just ripped apart there from one hit, one swipe from that Chaos Dreadnought. Chaos Dreadnought now potentially in trouble. Here is going to be a squad of Wraithguard out on the field. So Haywire went in, but we could also just have the Sorcerer tie up the Wraithguard, and then they can't really do anything. So yeah, that's actually not going to go that well for the Wraithguard. Sorcerer will be knocked back in return by the Fire Prism. We actually have the double Fire Prism build from Legionator. Now, the Fire Prisms, in my opinion, are a fantastic unit, but one of the things that I feel should be a little dangerous about this is that since we do have Sorcerer players, we could have people like Noisy and DanielGrushin teleport in something like... They could teleport in the Terminators with the autocannon along with the Plague Marines. Teleporting in the Terminators is risky. Teleporting in the Plague Marines not so much, but the Plague Marines by themselves also not really strong enough. So one Fire Prism in a little bit of trouble. Doom Bolts are going to go in. But Chaos, unfortunately, now really tightening the noose. Not managing to kill that Fire Prism, but pushing it far back enough that our Eldar players are not able to get the victory points back. And look at this, the use of this Demon Armor. Actually really mitigating the effectiveness of the Wraithguard because they can't suppress. They don't do quite the heavy damage that they're known for. A squad of Plague Marines, though, going to have to be real careful. This is a level 4 squad of Plague Marines, and then, although I kind of talked about how much I feel Plague Marines are not that great of a unit, I honestly would really want to keep a level 4 squad of Plague Marines alive, because the fact that they are level 4 is going to mitigate their weaknesses a bit. Oh, I was going to say, if only this Predator was a Lascannon Predator, but it's not going to matter at this point, because that's going to be Game 1 taken in favor of our Chaos players. So, we're going to move on to Game 2. Stick around and enjoy the rest of the games. Alright, we're back with Game 2. This one's going to be on Cathari Ruins. Our Chaos team is leading 1-0. And our first player is going to be Cenzontotochtin. Yeah, I learned how to say this name. Playing as Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer. Spellcasting and Manipulation hero. We've got a trio of them, in fact. We've got Nimmsi returning to the Chaos team, and DanielGrushin, who I felt did very well in that last game. On the other team, we're going to have Fathom playing as the Eldar Farseer. Support hero with buffs and heals. Next up, we're going to have Legionator coming back, playing as the Eldar Warlock, a melee hero who can also be kitted out to be a spellcaster. And finally, we've actually got Noisy defecting over to the Eldar this time. And he's playing as the Warp Spider Exarch, a teleporting ranged mobility commander. So let's see what the Eldar players can do to try to come back into the series. Again, this is a best of 5, so first team to 3 wins with a maximum of 5 possible games. Chaos Sorcerer from Nimmsi gonna have to get out of there. chooses not to retreat, instead chooses to just soft battle back into the Heretic infiltration, while some Chaos Space Marines try to scare off the Chaos Space Marines. I'm actually surprised that they backed off. I felt they didn't really have to, given that it was only a squad of Chaos Space Marines. If both the Warlock and the Banshees committed to get into melee with the Chaos Space Marines, that would also give space for the Dire Avengers to hit them with range fire, and that would ultimately be a winning engagement, because right now these Chaos Space Marines are unsupported. Meanwhile, down here, we're going to have someone getting knocked down, another Chaos Sorcerer getting knocked down. This one's going to need the support of the Doom Blast from the Heretics to suppress the Howling Banshees before they can kill him. Chaos Sorcerer in quite a little bit of trouble. So do we have another teleport potentially available to finish him off? Looks like Noisy's not going to go for it, instead just choosing to bleed the Heretic models. Well, we're going to have another squad of Heretics. Doom Blast is back off cooldown. Would have suppressed the Dire Avengers, so they just retreat out of there. Dire Avengers losing a model. I mean, they only have 100 hit points per model at level 1 when they don't have their aspect of the Avenger yet. Eventually, this Warp Spider Exarch will have to go. He is in cover, but he's also being shot at by 3 squads of Chaos Space Marines. It's just going to be way too much damage coming in. And meanwhile, we are going to see a squad of Heretics from Cenzontotochtin getting a decap on the contested victory point. Actually, all victory points on this map are contested. They're just located centrally. Well, they're all located centrally, which makes them contested. But it's one located top, middle, and then one finally bottom. Ooh, that retreat path actually putting them closer into that Guardian Weapon Team. Guardian Weapon Team is going to move forward. Doesn't know what it's about to deal with, though. Probably going to... Yeah, I mean, he could actually just go in for melee. Yeah, ties up the Guardian Weapon Team. Good play. Good use of the Tzeentch Worship. That was Noisy. Of all people, Noisy not quite respecting that Heretic Worship. If anything, I almost wish that there was a squad of Heretics inside that Worship. Actually could have threatened to wipe that Guardian Weapon Team. Speaking of wipes, though, it's going to be a Sorcerer down from Nimmsi. And the Sorcerer himself does not really want to be in melee with the Howling Banshees if he can help it. He really needs to... Our Chaos players do need to be ready with having Heretics ready to suppress Howling Banshees when they get into melee, especially if they do get into melee with the Sorcerer. So this is looking like it's going to be a full power bash right here by our Eldar players. 2 squads of Howling Banshees and a squad of 2 Guardian Weapon Teams also to support this push. Going to be very, very difficult to dislodge. I think it's at least going to be all the generators go down, but now with the approach by our Chaos players, we might see them let the power node go. I would actually really, really, really like to see this generator finished. Ooh, actually, yeah. I mean, now... Oh, the triple Guardian Weapon Teams. Talk about those layered firing arcs. Incredibly hard to get around this. Might need that demon armor again. Yeah, they just can't seem to deal with it. I mean, this is, I guess, how these Eldar players come back into the game. Is that going to be Sigil of the Rift? Yes, it is. Actually switching place with the Havocs. I think he wanted to teleport the Guardian Weapon Team in, but I don't think teleporting the Havocs into the Eldar was part of that plan, which is part of the tricky part of using the Sigil of the Rift. It is a very cheesy ability. And, you know, I just got to admit after all these years that the Chaos Sorcerer honestly is a very cheesy commander. A lot of things that he can do are... They really toe the line between either being too good or being a gimmick, which is also something that has always made him very difficult to balance, because either his abilities are too good or they end up just being gimmicks. And one of the things that is tricky about that Sigil of the Rift is that sometimes there's just a lot of factors to consider with how you need to micro that, and especially if you're like me and you don't have God tier micro, you might end up accidentally teleporting the wrong unit, and I think that's part of the case that we saw happen right there. And it was Nimmsi who was trying to pull off those shenanigans. So meanwhile, up top, we are going to see a different build from Cenzontotochtin. Cenzontotochtin with a very traditional Chaos Sorcerer build in that Sword of Flame and the Vestments of the Warp. An old favorite, just a pretty reliable. Just teleport the Sorcerer in. When he actually has the Sword of Flame, his damage is actually pretty respectable. Not super strong, but respectable. And then he does also have that Coruscating Flame ability. I don't even know what the word Coruscating even means. I've heard that word for so long, but I don't even know what it really means. But it just wraps whatever unit you target with it in flames, damage over time. Surprised to see no attempt to kill this Chaos Raptor squad, but I think Grenade was probably on cooldown. Yeah, definitely. Meanwhile, down here, we are going to see Howling Banshees in melee. Howling Banshees... Alright, Raptors get out of melee from the Banshees, but that means the Chaos Space Marines are still here. Chaos Space Marines really want to be careful, but actually there was so much support. Actually, no, it's Banshees that needs to be careful. This could be a wipe on the Banshees. Is it going to be? And yes, it will be. That's rough. Here's the retaliation from Legionator. But there is the use of those heretics. I like the use of those heretics. I mean, it is. I say I like it, but I mean, it's actually just very standard. That's just how you play. It's how you play the race, basically, especially against Eldar. Which is that certainly in Tier 1, and honestly throughout most of the game, heretics, I would actually say, are the primary response against Howling Banshees for Chaos, because they are rather reliable in that aspect. Because since they are a melee unit, Banshees is going to be very difficult for them to kite away for them once the heretics initiate their melee charge, and then that just on-demand suppression, very, very effective as well. Grenades go in, going to actually target. Ooh, that's going to be. Oh, that's going to be rough. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to kill the squad, but I mean that was still a lot of damage on that Havoc squad. There's going to be another attempted generator bash. A little slow on the micro to actually just start targeting those generators. Finally, we see it. If anything, okay, I was going to say I was a little surprised to see the Banshees move out, but I mean they moved out because of the fact that they didn't have a lot of hit points. They will try to counter-initiate on these Raptors, but I'm not sure how well that's going to go with only a half-strength squad of Banshees. Here is the support for the Raptors. And this squad, oh my god, Doomblast right there. There is the Doomblast. That's another squad of Dire Avengers in a huge amount of trouble. Could this be another dead squad of Dire Avengers? This one I think is going to make it out alive. Unless we do have Dark Flames in retreat, and there is a much, much better use of Dark Flames. And once again, we are seeing that Demon Shield. Is that DanielGrushin again? Yes, it is. So DanielGrushin, we're seeing the build that he likes to go. He's liking that Demon Shield, and I'm liking it too. I guess I just never used it enough, but I mean, if you just think about what it does and what DanielGrushin and our Chaos players are up against, an attempted Sigil of the Rift doesn't work, but does force a retreat. I think it's actually very, very useful. So we are going to see, ooh, heretics. This could be bad for these heretics. Just going to be instant retreat, and they get a good retreat path. Yeah, Fathom is not really going to be able to punish that, so they get out of there just fine. Tzeentch upgrade started, and instead swapped out for a Khorne upgrade. You don't see that Khorne. Well, actually, I mean, you see it sometimes. But it is kind of a strange upgrade. We are going to see them attempt to set up, but I think they're setting up under too much fire. The firing arc was also not good. Raptors jump in, but I think they're jumping in a little too far. At least they scare off the Guardian Weapon team, which is, I guess, just one of the things they needed to do there. The victory points. So it's actually a very even game again between our two teams once again. Oh no! Why did they stop? That was actually so close. I really would not have thought the Raptors would have died in retreat there, but this is very much going to be a Sorcerer dying in retreat. So again, really, Sorcerer by himself, not quite a counter to Howling Banshees, at least not in the sense of fighting them directly. You get Robes of Torment, maybe. You get Sword of Flame, and then you use Coruscating Flame on a squad of heretics. That works out too, but the Sorcerer head-to-head against Banshees, don't do it. Howling Banshees, meanwhile, now head-to-head against a Plague Marine squad. Plague Marines will lose a model, get knocked over. Ooh, there is the channeling runes from the Warlock. I often forget that the Warlock has a healing ability, and I really like the use of that channeling runes. I like the way that it is heal over time rather than just a single burst here, heal. And I think that is particularly useful for Banshees, more so in my opinion than, well, maybe not more so, but I think it has better synergy with Howling Banshees than the Spirit Stones from the Farseer actually would, because of the heal over time nature. Autarch call in on top of that demon shield. Meanwhile, I'm hearing the sounds of some Wraithguard, I think. Yeah, there are some Wraithguard, but they are being chased down by the Sorcerer from Cenzontotochtin with that Sword of Flame. Sorcerer from Cenzontotochtin actually in a lot of trouble, though, because he's being targeted by the Farseer, and Farseer does more damage, also has the Doombringer. Doombringer going to amplify the damage of whichever target, amplify the damage taken of whichever target that he chooses to use Doom on. Here is a squad of Khorne Chaos Space Marines. Doom has been used on them, so they got to be real careful here. Here, Doom is going to be increasing damage against the squad by 30%. And we are seeing the Khorne Chaos Space Marines still scaring off the Farseer. Autarch, meanwhile, is here, does have her energy bubble, but does not have the Executioner. So her damage here isn't particularly threatening. Small leap towards the Raptors. Actually takes down a model. That was worth it. So game looked even, and in many ways it still is, but this is a pretty significant VP lead for our Eldar players. 332 to 165 at the moment. Doombolt's going to go in on a squad of Dark Reapers. They took so much damage but did not lose a model. Autarch comes in. I think that's a new Autarch. That's a brand new one for Noisy coming out on the field. The other one coming from Fathom. More Doombolts go in. Oh my god, they actually wiped the squad. He didn't pay attention. Couldn't just leave that squad of Dark Reapers there when a potential Doombolts were imminent. Not even retreat in time, which could have saved them. So, our Eldar players starting to really establish dominance in this game. They're running away with it, much in the way the Space Marines ran away with the last game. Could this be a kill on the Chaos Space Marines? I don't think so. Unless, oh, these Howling Banshees are directly in their retreat path. All right, now they're not directly in their retreat path so more, and they're also not responding. Now they're attempting to. They could still kill this Chaos Space Marine. Okay. Yeah, they were just too late on that, but that actually definitely was a kill opportunity that was missed. Meanwhile, over here, we are going to see Khorne Chaos Space Marines going in, attempting to target the Farseer and the Autarch. Here's a Falcon rolling around. Going to be chasing off the Raptors because there isn't really a strong response to the Falcon in the immediate vicinity. So that is going to be the Eldar players maintaining control of the middle victory point. Top victory point going to start to be captured by Cenzontotochtin, which could at least even out the victory point pressure at 1-to-1, but it looks like our Eldar players are in a better position to recapture the bottom victory point. Howling Banshee's about to get in. Need to see a Doom Blast here. Say, Doom Blast goes in. Part of the problem, though, is that there's not enough follow-up to the Doom Blast. No squad of Chaos Space Marines are only ranged units, or Plague Marines and a squad of Chaos Havocs. So once again, the Sorcerer goes down. That is the Sorcerer from Nimmsi. Can't actually see his upgrades at the moment because he is dead. And that is actually going to be the concede by the Chaos players this time. And that's a win for our Eldar players. So that's going to be game 2 in favor of the Eldar. Alright, it's time for game number 3 in our Faction War series. This one's going to be on Argus Desert Gate. To start off, we've got Nimmsi on the Chaos side, playing as the Chaos Lord, tanky, disruptive melee hero who can walk through cover and not be suppressed. Next up, we've got DanielGrushin. Oh, I'm actually going to miss his Sorcerer play. Now playing as the Plague Champion, ranged hero who can get melee weapons later on. And finally, we've got Cenzontotochtin being our lone Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer this time. Their opponents, it's going to be Noisy, playing as the teleporting Warp Spider Exarch again, a ranged mobility harassment commander. Next up, we're going to have Legionator playing as the Eldar Warlock, melee hero who can also be kitted out to be a spellcaster. And finally, we're going to have Fathom, once again on the Farseer, a support hero with buffs and a heal. So our series is evened out. That means we could have as many as 2 more games with a possibility of as many as 3. Warlock going to get into melee with the Chaos Space Marines, tanking much of that incoming range fire. Does clear the way for the Banshees to also get into melee, but here is the counter initiation by the Chaos Heretics. Finally use suppression, and actually I think that was pretty well played by DanielGrushin, backing up when he saw the approach from the Howling Banshees. They don't have their Banshee aspect, or rather, well, either Banshee aspect, so they couldn't actually suppress to control the Chaos Space Marines or the Plague Champion. So DanielGrushin was actually able to kite them, and it worked out well to his advantage. Meanwhile, Chaos Space Marines in cover, 1 engagement for our Chaos players in that engagement, and we're going to see Cenzontotochtin being really, really aggressive here, not even choosing to capture the victory point, instead pushing all the way into the generator farm with just whatever he was doing there, however he accomplished that. So I would rather him not leave the Warp Spider Exarch alone. Like, I would actually say, like, put the Chaos Sorcerer into melee with the Warp Spider Exarch. Make him run away. Make him teleport away so that he doesn't just have free reign here. Even though he's not doing that much damage, he can still bleed some of these heretic models. And I say, why let him do that? Alright, looks like he's finally going to take my advice, because, you know, I'm sure he's listening. Maybe not. Okay, now he's going to need to go, though. If he stays any longer, he's going to lose both squads of heretics. Alright, he just lost one. The other one is actually probably dead, too. What happened? Talk about overstaying your welcome. Meanwhile, down here, going to be an attempted power bash by Nimmsi as well, pushing forward with the Chaos Lord. Chaos Lord... Oh, wow, that's just an early retreat by the Guardian. I really don't think the Guardian weapon team needed to retreat there. I think that was unfortunately just like nerves or something by Fathom. Guardian weapon team was not under so much threat that it needed to retreat there. So, I mean, luckily he doesn't have to go too far. And actually, we're seeing support here, so this is actually Legionator choosing to support. Doesn't want to lose too much of the power farm. Yeah, I feel like Fathom's a little slow on the response here. We might even still see this generator go down. Might be able to finish it even under suppression fire, but chooses to back off. I mean, to be fair, this is DanielGrushin also helping double this bottom lane. If you do think about it, in the early game, what does your player in the middle lane do? It actually is more helpful for them to double a lane rather than just play their own middle lane. So that means we're going to have a big fight going down here. Warlock is already in melee. I feel like it's actually kind of an important special attack for him to get. Raptors are going to slow down the advance of the Banshees, but now they're in melee against Banshees. I think we saw a Kill the Weak from the Chaos Lord and some heals going on. Is that another Channeling Runes Warlock? Yes, it is. Wow, so we're seeing that upgrade from Legionator. I was talking about how I liked the use of it last game, and I was trying to get a little bit more opportunity to explain why I like the use of the Channeling Runes compared to, say, the Spirit Stones from the Farseer. That Farseer Spirit Stones is just a single burst heal, so you have to use it after your squad has taken damage. But the more they take damage, the more they actually risk losing a model, and then there's some value lost by not activating the Spirit Stones at the right time. Compared to the Channeling Runes, where you can actually start using the Channeling Runes on Banshees when they still actually have quite a bit of health, and then they will just heal up as they take damage during a fight. So our Eldar players answering back. Chaos players had the better early end of the generator bashes, but now it's a full power bash from Noisy in the top lane. We're going to see more attempted generator bashes. This one's going to be carried out by Fathom in the bottom lane. I don't really like targeting the power node first unless he's going for a decap. And the reason why is that the majority of the power generation does come from the generators rather than the node. The node, well, it looks like he is going to attempt the decap on the node. Legionator, I think, recommending that Fathom backs off a little bit. Fathom now does get a generator. He doesn't finish the decap, though. I mean, actually, that's a kind of almost a risky retreat path for the Farseer. Since it's only Chaos Space Marines targeting the Farseer in retreat, they don't actually stand a chance of actually killing him. Meanwhile, wow, this feels like not enough damage going in on this Guardian weapon team. What's going on here? I mean, that's 2 squads of Chaos Space Marines. At this point, they're almost better off trying to flank and get around. Oh, I guess maybe they're actually targeting this squad, this Guardian weapon team, because it looks like they were doing no damage to this one. Yeah, that must have been the case. Meanwhile, on this side, a Chaos Space Marine squad is taken down to 1 model. Howling Banshee's getting into melee with a squad of Noise Marines, the first Noise Marine squad that we're going to see in this series. I actually, you know, when I think about these particular races, I don't, at least in my theory crafting that I'm doing right now, I don't really see the Noise Marines as being such a choice purchase against Eldar. So I feel like it's probably why we haven't seen them much yet, but let's just see how Cenzontotochtin can put them to use. We are going to see a Blood Crusher out from Nimmsi. He is definitely the player who is in tier 2 the fastest. And our Eldar players with a massive victory point lead at the moment, 294 to 500. So it means our Eldar players not actually losing a single victory point at the moment. So Blood Crusher is out on the field. What is he going to do with that? Because the Blood Crusher in many ways is an interesting unit. Not so much for how the unit actually just like fights, but more so for his role in terms of the economy of the game, where Blood Crusher is really best used when you have a tech advantage. Because it's a lot cheaper than a Dreadnought, you can get it out on the field a lot faster, and you specifically want a Blood Crusher when your opponent is not able to respond to it. And that basically means before they can get into tier 2 themselves. And that is the case with our Eldar players. And I think it works out somewhat well against the Eldar who, unless they commit to Warp Spiders, they don't have a snare. Because that Bright Lance from the Guardian weapon team does not snare compared to, say, the las cannons of other races. Meanwhile, up here, we are going to see Cenzontotochtin trying to move in. I think he's in trouble here, honestly. He did actually cancel out the ranged fire from the Guardian weapon team, and now I guess he's going to try to do that for the Dire Avengers. So we are seeing the Noise Marines starting to get some use and some value. Proving me wrong about what I said about their relative lack of value. I mean, obviously what the Noise Marines do is that they will shut down any ranged weapons. I'm just concerned that in this matchup they could get outranged and focused down first. Especially because there are so many Guardian weapon teams out on the field for our Eldar players. Attempting a generator bash as well, it's probably part of the thinking, since this is a map where, I mean, generator bashes are not too hard to pull off, especially up here. But engagement's going to happen in the middle now. Grenades will be responded to, do minimal damage to that squad of heretics. Very lucky, or at least just, maybe not lucky, but, you know, the opposite of luck, where you actually just play well. Because if he had not dodged those grenades, that actually could have been a wipe on the heretics. Probably not, but still, I'm going to say could have been. So double Bright Lances are out, and this is definitely for one player, so Fathom giving up all of his suppression for that anti-vehicle use. And we also have a Falcon out on the field. Falcon, though, is going to be rather light anti-vehicle. The other thing we have out for our Eldar players is going to be a squad of Wraithguard for Fathom. Fathom does have a rather interesting build where he's going very, very heavy on anti-vehicle damage, and yet I feel like the Blood Crusher doesn't necessarily have to die to it. Double Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. This must be... Who is this from? It's from a mix of players. We've got Nimmsi and DanielGrushin in the middle. Cenzontotochtin playing that top lane. Gonna have to retreat out of there against these. So, I mean, yeah, Noisy actually keeping his suppression. Cenzontotochtin might want to get a vehicle of his own to scare away some of that suppression. Could make it easier for him to approach up top.
He's got double Raptors, but it doesn't seem like his double Raptors are really panning out. Losing a lot of models. 3 models in total between those 2 Raptor squads. And our Eldar players, they have lost some victory points at the moment, and yet they've still got a massive victory point lead, and they currently have the 2-to-1 cap. Bright Lance weapon teams will set up. That's going to be some pretty quick generator bashes, long range on these setup weapons, especially with the help of the Wraith Guard as well. It's going to be a very, very quick bash. I mean, these Chaos players cannot seem to keep their power alive in this game, and just a full retreat. Chaos Lord will be upgraded with the Armor of Inferno. Haven't seen that used yet. So it is very interesting to see how this Blood Crusher has actually stayed alive for so long. Has not been seriously threatened in terms of anti-vehicle damage. Our Eldar players mostly choosing to get either relatively light anti-vehicle responses or anti-vehicle responses that, well, can't kill a Blood Crusher because they aren't able to lock him down. Chaos Sorcerer is going to be immobilized here. I believe that's by the, yes, we have the Entangle ability from the Warp Spider Exarch, shutting down a squad. That should be the end of the Guardian Weapon Team. So 1 Guardian Weapon Team down for Noisy. That's rather rough, and that's also definitely a purpose that the Noise Marines serve in this case. Very, very good at dealing with that garrison. Howling Banshees in way over their head. This should also be a wipe on the Howling Banshee, especially with how they're just messing around in retreat. So squad of Howling Banshees lost. This is starting to not look good for our Eldar players. Not quite responding to the to the vehicles from, well, mainly from Nimmsi, and then just straight up losing squads and now losing a commander here. That should be a dead Warlock. She's just in against way too many forces. Meanwhile, over here, Blood Crusher does finally go down. Turned out the firepower of 2 Guardian weapon teams with Bright Lances was just too much, and after it had gotten too far into that firing arc, it couldn't get out. So Blood Crusher will be gone, which, all things considered, it isn't a big deal. I felt that the Blood Crusher lived long enough. That's about how long I would expect a Blood Crusher to live. And I think it got some decent value in the time that it was alive. I don't know if these Havocs, though, are going to get much value in the time that they're alive, because they're actually going to be dead right now. Yep, that's the end of that Havoc squad. Meanwhile, this is an Autarch. Autarch? Okay, Autarch jumps out so that she doesn't die. She was also in there against quite a bit of stuff. We are going to see double Bright Lance now are going to kind of lack a purpose in life, since there aren't any vehicles to deal with anymore from the Chaos players. Grenades from the Autarch killing. I don't even remember what that squad was in the garrison because of the way those grenades took out the squad that was in the garrison from the Autarch. So our Eldar players continuing to push the advantage, about to get a double cap any second now. Falcon, though, is going to be gone, and actually Legionator is hurting. Legionator lost his Warlock, lost his Falcon. And now, I also think that Noise is going to lose his Wraith Lord. Yeah, he does not make it out of the firing arc in time. He just pushed in too far with the Wraith Lord, and that's going to be it. And, you know, that's not like a Blood Crusher where I say, yeah, Blood Crusher can die now. Generally speaking, you don't want your Wraith Lord to die. Ideally, and to the extent that it's okay for it to die, it would definitely more when you're well into Tier 3 and you're facing down a lot of Tier 3 units. And at that point, it's like, all right, Wraith Lord is dead. Just get like a Fire Prism now or something. Raptor's going to jump in for Cenzontotochtin. Cenzontotochtin also with Vestments of the Warp once again on the Sorcerer. So we're seeing that that's his preferred armor upgrade. Generator bash will happen by the Chaos team. So this game is not over yet. Still a massive victory point lead for our Eldar players. Generator bash is going on both sides, although we're definitely getting to the stage of the game where bashing generators may not have a huge impact. There was definitely a lot of generators killed in this game. Many were killed in the making of this faction war. However, it doesn't look like it necessarily had a big impact either way because so many generators were killed on both sides. And overall, both teams look like they're doing fine in terms of tech. We do have some teams that are still in Tier 2, some teams that got into Tier 3. Grenade, not entirely dodged. Dodged by the Heretics, which is definitely good, but not dodged by that Chaos Space Marine squad. And Heretics are just going to have to go. I'm actually a little disappointed there not to see the Heretics target the Dire Avenger squad. I think they actually could have put a lot of hurt on this Dire Avenger squad. So Chaos look like they are soon actually going to maintain a double cap for a little bit. Once they get the cap on the natural victory point, they're also going to attempt to recap their power, I would think. Not hugely important, but you don't just want to leave it uncapped. DanielGrushin also with a massive amount of requisition, so he should be the one to fund the new power farm. Hell, I mean, at this point, I would even say DanielGrushin, just get another Chaos Space Marine squad or something. Just something that you can sink some of that requisition into, put a unit out on the field. He's going for a Predator, which I don't disagree with the Predator at all. I think Predator's a great choice. But, I mean, throw in a Chaos Space Marine squad in there, too. Why not? So DanielGrushin. No, it was Nimmsi who purchased this. I really feel like that should have been DanielGrushin. But, I mean, they might not necessarily be communicating with each other in terms of how much resources they have. You know, I've been away from Dawn of War, and I've gotten used to games where communicating with voice chat is very, very common. And I wonder how, certainly when I played Dawn of War 2, I almost never played team games where I was in voice chat with the people who I was playing with. But I wonder if that happens more, especially now with Discord servers actually being a stable part of the Elite Mod community at the moment. Raptor's going to be jumping in, but jumping into way more than they can handle. That was ultimately a very pointless jump. He's not going to pay too hard for that, at least. So we are into Tier 3, and now it's going to be all players, 5 players into Tier 3, and just one last player getting there. We're starting to get to the point of the game where we could see a few nukes. We are going to see generator bashes, and at this point in the game, I mean, those generator bashes are actually almost more about trying to get the red for a nuke. Nuke is on standby for Cenzontotochtin, on standby, I think, for Legionator. Nope, just kidding. Legionator's close, though. Nimmsi, relatively close. So actually, not that many players actually... only Cenzontotochtin is the one who can definitely use a nuke right now, if he so chooses. Although Nimmsi and Legionator could potentially use a nuke sometime in the near future. DanielGrushin choosing to use his red on other things. We did see that cloud there. That, I'm going to say it's called the Noxious Cloud. Let's run with that. Otherwise, you know, we can just call it a Plague Cloud and be like, what? It's a Plague Champions Global. Here is a Mark of Nurgle Predator. Starting to see that a lot more often. You know, for me, I don't know. It could just be an old school thing. I don't know if the Nurgle Predator has undergone any more changes, but I'm just all about that las cannon. Although Corn Predator is also a very interesting choice too, with that all-around buff, 75%, including the bolters. Raptors are going to jump in, but so is the Autarch. A lot of things are here, but not quite enough to overwhelm the Eldar. Raptors haven't actually really been focused down yet, and we are seeing the Sorcerer shooting some... Oh man, Dire Avenger's now taking too much damage, I think that time from the Nurgle Predator. Meanwhile, what happened? The Fire Prism went down. Oh man, I missed that. How did it go down? I mean, it must have been... I really actually can't even say. I have no idea. I think that was Legionator's Predator. Or sorry, Fire Prism. I don't think he really even understands how he lost that either. Meanwhile, here is the Avatar of Cain out on the field. I would say, you know, I talked about the Wraithlord before. I would say the Avatar of Cain does take up some of the similar purposes that the Wraithlord does, although the Avatar of Cain doesn't do any range damage. So it's not necessarily an exact one-to-one roll functionality, but I mean, they're similar in that they are walker units, basically. They threaten a lot just with their body and with their approach. So our Chaos players are up against a wall, especially with the Eldar about to take back the contested victory point. I think the Autarch, oh man, just straight up walking in takes more than half damage on approach and will just retreat out of there. Attempted Wailing Doom. Some of the Plague Marines are going to be caught in that, but they don't take a huge amount of damage, or rather, maybe they're just so tanky that it doesn't look like they take a huge amount of damage. Chaos players in a bit of trouble, so here is the approach up top. It's going to be the Sorcerer to get the decap. Probably going to possibly need to trade this out, or just going to use the Guardian Weapon Team, sorry, rather, the Raptors to target the Guardian Weapon Team, scare them off. Here's an Eldritch, though. So Eldritch denies the recap. Aside from denying the recap, Eldritch achieved very, very little. Here's the approach by the Eldar players on the Chaos Natural, though, and this is looking like a decap that's going to happen. Like, unless we see them approach out real soon. Also, our Eldar players not quite there with the decap. Predator in a lot of trouble. Predator's just off the field. They can't do anything or it's going to die. This is going to be rough for our Chaos players. It looks like the Plague Champion will be able to secure the contested victory point up top. But our Eldar players, will they be able to secure this one? That's going to be a Let the Galaxy Burn on top of a Imperial Abyss from Cenzontotochtin. And I'm not sure, that looked like a good Imperial Abyss to me. But we're seeing that 2-to-1 cap. It's got to be a cap, so I think it's going to be these Chaos Space Marines going in for the decap. Okay, it's also a decap by someone on the bottom, some Raptors from DanielGrushin. So we're going to see Chaos Space Marines get a decap on their natural victory point, and eventually probably try a full cap. But they're also having the problem where they might even want to join this fight. Alright, I think there's enough support from other units, and the Touch of Nurgle use from DanielGrushin is great. I mean, that Touch of Nurgle use was actually really, really useful there. Actually results in the Howling Banshees being killed. Can't get much more Touch of Nurgle value out of there, though, with the Heretics just being left with the Aspiring Champion model. So 2-0 cap for our Chaos players. A squad of Howling Banshees is going to be recapping the natural victory point for the Eldar. Chaos Predator just walking... Chaos Predator walking, what am I saying? Chaos Predator driving through the wall, knocking it down to give it line of sight. And Eldar players seemingly starting to lose control of this game. They don't need many more victory points to take it. But our Chaos players are rolling out with tanks. We've got 3 tanks, and soon it's going to be 5. Oh, but Chaos Lord does go down. Not the easiest revive for either DanielGrushin or Cenzontotochtin. But not completely unreasonable with how far the Chaos players are pushed in. Oh my, triple cap and the Imperial Abyss. Imperial Abyss... I mean, it scares them off, but ultimately doesn't... I'm really looking for Imperial Abysses to result in at least 1 squad wipe, for it to really feel like it's worth that 500 red that you're throwing out there. Where is DanielGrushin? I mean, it looks like DanielGrushin possibly trying to come for the revive on the Chaos Lord. Level 5 Chaos Lord, level 3 Plague Champion, there with the Icon of Nurgle and the Armor of Pestilence and the Plague Fist. I feel like I could call this... I almost feel like this is the Indrid build. I think it is. I think he liked this build. Indrid was a Plague Champion player. I'm not sure how much he even still plays these days. And Chaos Lord goes down. Oh man, I don't know what happened there. I feel like that should have been a revive on the Chaos Lord, then they both get out without dying. Instead, now they're both dead. I don't think Cenzontotochtin gets these revives now. This is not good for our Chaos players. Even though the Chaos team is winning 2-0, and the Eldar players need to push them out. I'm not liking this double commander wipe. Meanwhile, we will see a revive by Noisy on the... I can't even tell you. Oh, that was the Warlock. These Predators, though, doing so much damage to these approaching Wraithguard. Wraithguard can't do enough damage to any single Predator to get a kill. So we've got a bunch of Predators out. Mark of Nurgle Predator, Mark of Khorne Predator, another Nurgle. Wow, they really like the Nurgle Predator. And up here it is another 4 Nurgle Predators. My God. So, you know, I gotta take a look at this tooltip, because, I mean, the Mark of Nurgle Predator was changed actually very early in Elite Mod's life, but I'm just wondering if there's something that was changed even more recently. It looks the same as what I remember it being. I don't know if maybe just the numbers were tweaked, because these guys are really rocking the Mark of Nurgle Predators. Now, a big thing that the Mark of Nurgle Predator gets, though, is it does have a huge amount of hit points. Huge amount of hit points. And level 3 has 1,500 hit points. That's a ton for a Predator. Seer Council attempting to approach. I don't like the approach. I don't like Seer Council solo approach. They are just going to need to retreat at some point. They lose a model, and Legionator is not in the greatest position to reinforce a squad as expensive as Seer Council. This squad of Seer Council is almost effectively dead. They will not be able to get back out on the field very soon. And oh my God, all these Predators moving in. Brightlands, though, going to be targeting one of those Predators. So one Predator is down, just as I was talking up the Predators. Haywire, I think, was that going to be... Because I saw the Warp Spiders teleported. Haywire did go in, but there's not going to be follow-up for it. And actually, that's another Predator. Yeah, it's another... Oh, actually, was that... It's a Predator down. I don't know if that was another one, because, man, how many Predators do they have? Wraithlord going to be ripping apart these Chaos Space Marines. And the Eldar Players, it's actually getting down to the wire. Eldar Players not being able to push back out. Just trying to get a recap on their natural victory point, but here is an Imperial Abyss. Oh no! That was the Imperial Abyss of the game. That was, oh my God. I think that's the... Yeah, that is the game in favor of Chaos. That was a great one. I love that one. That Chaos clawing back into that game. And I mean, that was finally the value of the Imperial Abyss, getting multiple squad wipes. That is the potential of it. Hope you enjoyed it, but we're not done yet. So this is 2-1 for Chaos. We've still got at least one more game, possibly 2. Stick around for the next game. All right, game number 2 in our faction war between Chaos and the Eldar is going to take place on Katrin Purification Plant. First up, we've got Cenzontotochtin playing as Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer, a spellcasting and manipulation hero. Next up, we've got DanielGrushin. Actually did quite well on that Plague Champion as well, so I'm liking this too. I think I'm just becoming a DanielGrushin fan. Ranged hero who can get melee weapons and heals. Finally, on the Chaos side, we are going to have Nimmsi playing as the Chaos Lord, tanky melee hero who can knock down cover and walk through it and cannot be suppressed. Our Eldar players, we're going to have Legionator back on that Warlock, melee hero who can be kitted out with spells if need be. Noisy playing as the teleporting Warp Spider Exarch, a ranged mobility and harassment commander. And finally, it's going to be Fathom back on the Farseer, support hero who can also get a heal. So, we've got another game. We've got, although I won't spoil things, I will say we do have another long one ahead of us, so get ready for it. Anyway, Warp Spider Exarch going to be opening fire on the Heretics, just trying to bleed those models off. Just a standard use of the Warp Spider Exarch. He's very hard to catch, so you want to use him to just bleed models off of squads, especially melee squads that effectively can't do anything against him. Warp Spider Exarch will start taking some damage while he's in cover, but I mean he's actually just so persistently doing things passively over time. Whereas the Warlock wants a more active approach, leads the charge so that he can tank some of the damage to also allow the Howling Banshees to get into melee. A very early aspect of strength from Legionator, choosing to make that a priority upgrade. I do like the early aspects from the Howling Banshees, but part of what that means is that Legionator is slower to get out a tier 1.5 unit, whereas we see that Noisy and Fathom both rushing to get that Guardian weapon team as their first power unit purchase. And there's definitely a lot of merit to that too. We've seen how valuable the Guardian weapon team is. It's always been extremely valuable for Eldar, a very core part of their play. Ooh, so close. I don't know if that getting... I mean, they tried to get into range of the Guardian weapon team. Are they going to go down? Okay, Squad of Heretics does not go down. But this is going to be Cenzontotochtin forced off the field. Just full retreat from him. If he had gotten the Heretics into melee just a little bit faster, could have been a different story. Where are the Eldar upon us? We are going to see... I don't really like the solo bash by the Guardian weapon team on this power node. It's going to take... Well, actually, it's proceeding a little bit faster than I thought. But I don't think it's quite the best use of its time, unless there's nowhere else for it to be at the moment. Squad of Chaos Space Marines will get scared off by the Warp Spider Exarch, and a Havoc was placed here. It did manage to catch the Farseer with its Suppression Arc. And I think this squad of Howling Banshees also does need to go, taking damage from different directions. Havoc on one side, pincered by Chaos Space Marines on the other, with some Heretics there to suppress it if needed. Looks like that's grenades coming out, so we are seeing a Grenade Launcher Heretic Squad. Who does have the Grenade Launcher Heretic Squad? So that's actually Nimmsi with the Grenade Launcher Heretic Squad. Now, I don't necessarily dislike Grenade Launcher Heretics, but I feel like if you're going to get a squad of Grenade Launcher Heretics, I think you should have at least one more Heretic Squad that can stay as melee against Eldar. Because I think for Nimmsi, he's realistically at the moment not going to have any way to stop Howling Banshees if they approach him. Chaos Lord really can't do enough, because all he has is Kill the Weak, which is slightly, in my opinion, less effective than Doomblast as a way of controlling the Howling Banshees, especially because it can be baited out and then dodged. Whereas the same is not really true of Doomblast. So Sorcerer will move in once again, Cenzontotochtin with those Vestments of the Warp and also getting the Sword of Flame. And that's even something where as soon as that upgrades, he could actually re-engage here. Choosing not to re-engage, he's choosing to back up. I'm actually not entirely sure why. I feel like he could actually have re-engaged here and started a bit of a power bash. He's got more units at the moment. Instead, he's choosing to play passively. At the moment, I gotta say, I don't really like that play. There weren't enough squads out here from Fathom to actually win against what he has. There is going to be the jump. I feel like the Sorcerer wants to teleport in as well. Actually, he's just going to be able to walk in, so he doesn't need to teleport in. But I was really thinking like full-on dive approach to dealing with that Guardian weapon team. I do think, though, if the Sorcerer had jumped in at the same time as the Raptors, he actually would have wiped the Guardian weapon team. As it is, there's still potential for him to wipe a squad. Like, if he has teleport ready, he might actually... Yeah, he's going to try it. And he does wipe the Guardian weapon team. Very nice. He did lose his Raptors in the process, though, so a little bit disappointing for him. Here is that Warp Spider Exarch being pretty annoying. And to facilitate that, he has upgraded the Warp Spider Exarch with the Heavy Gauge Death Spinner and the Improved Targeters. Improved Targeter is going to increase his range so he can stand back at much longer distance, stay a lot safer, and both of these are going to increase his damage. 50% increase from the Improved Targeters, and then Heavy Gauge Death Spinner is just another weapon that, I mean, all weapon upgrades are going to give you a damage increase. Actually, that might not be exactly true in some cases, but in most cases that's true. I feel like the Heavy Gauge Filament is not even really the purpose of getting the Heavy Gauge Death Spinner, but I mean, it can still definitely have some uses. We'll see later on more if he does choose to use that. Grenade Launcher Heretics in a bit of trouble. They don't get a barrage off. Meanwhile, Eldar Players in the middle going to be taking the contested victory point. Then Howling Banshee is going to get into melee with the Havocs. Not actually able to really dodge the grenade. They did mostly dodge it. Actually, would have been way worse if they had actually really stepped right square onto that grenade. Instead, they managed to dodge most of the blast, and it was just one lone model at the end that was caught and ultimately killed by that grenade. So 2-to-1 cap for the Chaos players. Could we see a kill on the Warp Spider Exarch? I don't think so. Jump has already been used by the Raptors, so they don't really have a second chance there against the Warp Spider Exarch. But I think something's going to be done about this power node. And as long as we have a little bit of a lull in the action, let's take a look at upgrades. We do already know Cenzontotochtin with that Vestments of the Warp and Sword of Flame Sorcerer. DanielGrushin, nothing yet. Chaos Lord with the Armor of the Inferno. We are seeing Raptors jump into a Guardian Weapon team, but there's going to be a bit of a response from the Guardian Weapon team and the Dire Avengers coming out of the Webway Gate. Guardian Weapon team actually in a huge amount of trouble, though. So there is the support there from the Howling Banshees, but a little bit of a misplay there by Noisy, not having the Howling Banshees there with the Guardian Weapon team to slow that approach by the Raptors. And ultimately, we're going to have another Blood Crusher. This one's coming from... So it's Nimmsi again with the Blood Crusher. And, I mean, it is very common for Blood Crushers to be coming from Chaos players... Sorry, from Chaos Lord players, since the Heretic worship from a Chaos Lord, I think, synergizes particularly well with the Blood Crusher. Helps the Blood Crusher to get in faster. Can also help the Blood Crusher to escape when it's in danger. But this Blood Crusher seems like it's having a little bit more trouble getting value, because it's just going to die entirely right there. That was very much like a zero value Blood Crusher. I mean, I guess it kind of won one engagement, so it's like still not much higher than zero. Like if we have to just add value to... If we had to add a number value, that was definitely like a decimal and not even a whole number. So yeah, that Blood Crusher was just well dealt with. So Cenzontotochtin with a Blood Crusher for zone. Does also have Blood Crusher, does also have some synergy with the Tzeentch worship as well, since it can be infiltrated. That can save it. Can also help to get it in. Raptor's going to be jumping in for DanielGrushin. They're going to need some support. Yeah, so the support there was a little slow. Support's going to come from Nimmsi. He's going to be focusing some things down. Oh my god, these Chaos Raptors nearly died from that engagement. And I think the Guardian Weapon team actually going to die in that engagement. Meanwhile, another Guardian Weapon team scaring things off. Blood Crusher, this one from Cenzontotochtin, staying alive. I believe that is the Doom ability. It has been marked by Doom from the Farseer. Farseer was pretty close by. Did put Doom on the Blood Crusher, but there wasn't really a follow-up to capitalize on that. Oh dear. So, Banshees, both the Banshees and the Chaos Space Marines are in trouble. So Banshees, if these Banshees don't die, that's massive. They had so few hit points. They killed the Chaos Space Marines. I think it was a squad of Chaos Space Marines. So they will get slowed down by the Chaos Havocs, but it's even going to be Warp Spiders teleporting in and forcing melee on the Havocs to make it so that they can't fire. Howling Banshees there, just kind of face tanking that range fire. Unfortunately, not achieving much. Lost a model. Here is a jump by some Raptors. A late jump by one of those models, kind of strange. Going to be doing a lot of damage to this Dire Avenger squad, but here is the response from the Banshees. There is some supporting range fire against the Banshees, so Banshees potentially in trouble here, because we've got a squad of Chaos Space Marines, have the Plague Champion, who still has the default bolter. And you know what? I mean, in this particular case, I'm liking the default bolter. I don't know if there's much of a reason yet for DanielGrushin to get a different melee weapon, since the Plague Champion is relatively unique in the sense that if you choose to get a weapon upgrade for him, you're losing that default bolter, and none of his weapon upgrades serve the same function as his default bolter. The closest would be the Bile Spewer, but I don't feel that that's exactly the same function. Blastmaster Noise Marine attempted to shoot, but unfortunately hit some terrain instead. I'm hearing a Sorcerer actually getting a staff ready, and that's Noisy's Warp Spider Exarch going down. So DanielGrushin now choosing to actually switch to the Rod of Warpfire. Interesting to see him finally switch it up. He's been rocking that Sword of Flame. Actually, I don't think he even got a weapon upgrade last game, but he definitely got the Sword of Flame in the first game. So Eldar are going to be setting up here. One energy shield put down. I don't feel that's a great position for an energy shield. I guess it could be used theoretically just as a defending point for if there is an approach on the generators. That's pretty far back, so it would probably still be like a shuriken cannon on a Bright Lance that could really get value out of being in that position. Chaos Dreadnought out from DanielGrushin. Wow, actually it feels like our Chaos players are almost a little behind in tech. I feel like I don't remember that many generator bashes happening in this game, especially compared to the last game. But we're seeing DanielGrushin and Cenzontotochtin still in Tier 2, although Cenzontotochtin close to Tier 3. But our Eldar players, all three of our Eldar players already in Tier 3. So it looks like a flanking angle from Cenzontotochtin did result in the, well, that full retreat from Fathom. And he does have that Blood Crusher there to support that flank. Haywire went in on the Chaos Dreadnought, but there wasn't enough follow-up. Bright Lance is setting up, but it's also in a position where it could be very, very easily approached and taken down. Bright Lance still targeting the Blood Crusher, so there is that quick Tzeentch worship to infiltrate it to make it so that it can't be targeted anymore. Well done. Sorcerer, yeah, that was smart. I was going to say, there are a lot of things that I notice in this game, especially after I've played some other games where people might be sticking around in situations unnecessarily, trading health in situations when there really is no reason to. So I was really happy to see DanielGrushin just teleport away there, not take the unnecessary health damage. Now he's choosing to lead the charge with the Sorcerer. This, I would say, is not so unnecessary. He's trading that health for a reason, to chase them off, to actually win an engagement. But he does have to be very careful about this Farseer, who's going to get into melee, could even potentially take a model off the Chaos Space Marines, even just by herself. Blood Crusher, though, will very much deter that. Blood Crusher will definitely be very, very dangerous for the Farseer. She can't do much about that. And ultimately, overall, I like the way Cenzontotochtin handled that. Was able to push Eldar players back into their base, although he wasn't able to get like a decap, or he didn't stop the cap by the Eldar players on their natural victory point. That part I was a little disappointed to see. So Fire Prism is now out on the field. We've got, well, just the one from Noisy, and then Fire Prism seems to be pushing the Space Marine players back. Yeah, they don't really have an adequate response for the Fire Prism at the moment. The Fire Prism just has such long range that can, I mean, we just see the way it's just knocking down these Chaos Space Marine models. Oh! But the Howling Banshee's running into a long-range weapon from the Chaos players with that Blastmaster Noise Marine, knocking them down. I don't think they actually took any serious losses in that case. They lost 2 models. Meanwhile, there is a warp throw. Where's the combo? Where are the grenades? Oh, I guess the combo is just the Howling Banshees in that case. Actually, the combo's working out really, really well. You're getting very close to killing that Havoc squad. Squad of Heretics will need to go, and that also means both of these shrines are going to be destroyed. So I feel like the unit choice from our Eldar players was pretty good, choosing to get the Fire Prisms. We've actually got a Fire Prism from every Eldar player, so 1 Fire Prism per. Meanwhile, we've got the Blood Crusher moving in very far. And so, although Nimmsi's Blood Crusher didn't get much value, I think Cenzontotochtin has done well with his Blood Crusher. And I think we're also at the point of the game when, honestly, the Blood Crusher should die pretty soon. If it doesn't die, it probably can't actually do much to get that much value, especially with 3 Fire Prisms running around. D-Cannon now out for Noisy, so choosing to get those long-range artillery weapons. D-Cannon certainly a unit with very extreme range, much like the Fire Prism itself. Oh, this is bad, though. He needs to do something. Oh, he's exposing rear armor, but the Predator targets the Farseer instead. Okay, one more shot will do it, and I think it can get in. Ouch. So not quite responding to that approach. Cenzontotochtin has honestly been doing very well in this game. So I don't know. Could this be another victory for our Chaos team? Cenzontotochtin, by comparison, respecting the approach by the Banshees as well as the Wraith Guard. Sorcerer often in a forward position, tying things up. The use of the Sorcerer has been good too. Even though the Sorcerer's not that tanky, compared to other heroes, he's still a single entity, so just by default he has more hit points than most squads. And with the Vestments of the Warp, he can also teleport out and get out more easily if need be, although a lot of times he's also probably using that to initiate and go in. So it's still a double cap for our Eldar players, kind of off the virtue of the Fire Prism plays, even though one of those Fire Prisms has already been lost to the Tzeentch Predator from Cenzontotochtin. And that's one of the reasons why I like that Tzeentch Predator, because of just how incredibly effective it is against vehicles. And of course, it is definitely the least effective against infantry, but it's not like it's useless against infantry. Those side sponson bolters actually still do pretty decent damage, so you're still getting decent anti-infantry damage, even out of a las cannon Predator. Meanwhile, over here, we've got another Fire Prism potentially in trouble. Missiles are not going to hit it from the Chaos Dreadnought, so this is a Tzeentch Dreadnought now from DanielGrushin. Has been to... Oh no, Tzeentch Dreadnought in a lot of trouble. We need to see just Focus Blast from both Fire Prisms to take that out. Is it going to be able to finish it? No, maybe... Okay, it does finish it, but we might see Fire Prism go down too. Okay, this Fire Prism is safe. So as much as I talk up the Fire Prisms, when a Predator actually gets that close to a Fire Prism, it's in a huge amount of danger. Las Cannon Predator does so much damage just with a single shot from the Las Cannon. And these Fire Prisms, as much as they are a great unit, they are not that tanky. Only 500 hit points of vehicle armor. You don't have the option of an energy shield like the way you would on a Falcon. And the Las Cannon Predator actually now in a bit of trouble. Okay, I think it gets out alive. Actually, the Fire Prism got another shot because the Banshees were providing vision. Actually pretty well played there. So, levels being achieved. Blood Crusher level 2 still alive from Cenzontotochtin. But this is starting to look rough. It's starting to look rough in terms of the armies for our Eldar players are getting bigger. Not Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines still with the double cap. But I don't see how they hold it. Is that an Eldritch? No, that's a Warp Throw. I should have known. Yeah, that was not the Eldritch Indicator. Eldritch Indicator kind of like spins a little bit. And finally, the Blood Crusher actually does go down. I'm actually kind of glad to see it go down. There was no reason for it to live much longer. Fire Prisms. This Fire Prism is way too close. There's no reason a Fire Prism should ever be that close. And yet, Fire Prisms do manage to take down a Predator. I think that was from Cenzontotochtin. I gassed him up, talked about how well he was doing. He's only down to 2 squads, and he's floating a bunch of resources. When you've got 900 requisition, that's the point where I say, like, just buy a Chaos Space Marine squad. Like, just sink that requisition into a Chaos Space Marine squad. A lone Banshee Exarch gets out of there alive with 40 hit points. Level 3, really, really nice for them to actually keep that alive. Oh! Las Cannon shot as well as a Blastmaster shot does knock out that Fire Prism. I actually love the vehicle warfare that's going on in this game. I think we saw a Predator stay alive. This is DanielGrushin's, but it was actually teleported out of there by Cenzontotochtin. And look at what Cenzontotochtin has got. He has a Tome of Subjugation. That's going to be a Singularity. Singularity pulls in that's a Havoc model, but doesn't do much. Oh boy. Here is the Land Raider Phobos. Now, the Land Raider Phobos can certainly... in a way, I'm actually worried about the Land Raider Phobos. There's no reason, although our players have definitely, on some occasions, moved their Fire Prisms way too close, there's no reason that a Land Raider Phobos should be able to get into range to actually target a Fire Prism. Now, I say that, but, you know, things sometimes happen. But what the Land Raider Phobos can do is it can make it very, very difficult for the Eldar players to be able to get on this contested victory point. Right now, this contested victory point, no one has taken it, so it's a 1-to-1 cap. Am I missing something? We're going to see Raptors jumping in on the Wraith Guard, but I think they're going to be overwhelmed if we actually see... Banshee's not targeting the Raptors. I think that's a big misplay to not target the Raptors. Raptors actually kind of get the free reign there to just scare off, honestly, most of Fathom's army, but especially those Wraith Guard. Meanwhile, this Nurgle Predator from DanielGrushin staying alive. This might be why people also get the Nurgle Predator. Because it's so much tankier, it actually is able to stay alive a bit more easily with that huge hit point pool. I think this squad of Howling Banshees is going to go down. No! The Terminators aren't able to get another burst on the Howling Banshees. Then Howling Banshees getting out of there now with 5 hit points. And then later 7. That's going to be another Singularity. Going to pull in the Chaos Lord, but not going to kill him. Also pulls in 2 Heretic Models. Yeah, Heretic Models just going to be instantly give there. This is going to be an Imperial Abyss. And, oh, we've seen some good Imperial Abysses. We've seen some less good ones. This one, unfortunately, is actually going to top the list of the less good ones. That is very much as... Okay, maybe... Okay, got a Dire Avenger model. Gonna get another Dire Avenger model. Doesn't even kill that one. That was an Imperial Abyss. That was 500 red. It killed a single Dire Avenger model. Oh my god, this upgrade. Now, this is something I haven't seen in a while. What is this even called again? Not the Enhanced Warp Generator. This is going to be the Shimmer Orb. That one, I totally forgot what that was called. But it basically makes it so that it blocks all incoming damage and disables the ranged weapons of units inside. Often used as a stalling tool or as a late-game camping tool. Such an interesting war gear design. Unfortunately, it's not enough for the Warp Spider Exarch to actually even be able to take the victory point. Blastmaster still shooting things in, actually knocking over his own heretics in the process. Chaos Terminator is actually going to take a lot of damage from the Wraith Guard, but that's why Cenzontotochtin is in there teleporting the Sorcerer in. But Sorcerer has so low on hit points that he needs to get out. One squad of Wraith Guards still here, going to just start laying in the damage on the Terminators. It's going to be a lot of damage too. Man, just all over the place. Here is an Imperial Abyss. Imperial Abyss does not even hit the Predator, and the Predator is teleported out of there, but I do think some things were killed there. Fathom just calling way too much armor. But, I mean, they've certainly got, well, I mean, Eldar don't really have much in terms of heavy armor, but my god, these constant Fire Prism shots are incredibly oppressive, and they do actually manage to get the double cap back. Now the Eldar players have built up some very large armies. Cenzontotochtin has lost a lot of his stuff. DanielGrushin has a medium-sized army, but he doesn't have his Plague Champion. So finally, a slight lull in the action. DanielGrushin. I don't actually even know what I want to say about DanielGrushin. Oh, I know what I want to say. He's still got the red for an Imperial Abyss. So we've seen the effect of that Imperial Abyss. And there was a time long ago when I talked about my personal power rankings or tier list for the nukes in this game. And it has been my personal opinion that the Imperial Abyss is actually in the bottom half of the nukes. Anyway, Lascannon Predator going down there while I'm talking about Imperial Abysses that aren't even happening. Now, the thing about the Imperial Abyss is that it does have a huge amount of destructive power, but that huge amount of destructive power is actually concentrated in a very, very small area. And in order to really get value out of that small area, you need to somehow get units to either stand right in it or retreat right through that small area. We saw that in the last game where we saw the I believe it was 2 Wraith Guard that actually died from the Imperial Abyss. And unfortunately, we saw another game here. We saw another Imperial Abyss here that got ultimately close to no value. Well, not much to talk about because not much is happening. A Warlock is going to capture a contested power node. He has Providence. Let's take a look at the upgrades. So we did see our Warp Spider Exarch with... Oh, he has the Enhanced Warp Generator, so basically allowing him to teleport around a lot more often. Farseer, fully upgraded. Armor of Assyrian grants the Time Field ability. I mean, that's one. I am just going to read off what it says. Reduces movement speed in area by 40% and makes affected units unable to attack or use abilities. This is actually, this is a very strong ability. I believe, if I remember correctly, I think that's actually a Tier 3 war gear. And there aren't many Tier 3 war gears in this game. Most war gears are either Tier 1 or Tier 2. And the few Tier 3 war gears that are in the game often have very powerful effects. So there is a time field. Time field with... Oh, I thought that was going to be time field with an Eldritch, but there wasn't. It was just time field with a Singularity. Meanwhile, back cap by the... Who is this? This is the Warlock from Legionator. He's going to have to stop it there, otherwise he's going to lose the Warlock. He's not paying it. No, he's using Providence. It's not going to last long enough. What are the other upgrades? We've got Nimmsi's Chaos Lord with the Lightning Claws, still the Armor of the Inferno. DanielGrushin can't even see. And I think the Heretics get out of there alive. Here's yet another Predator. Another Predator from Cenzontotochtin. This one, I think it's it's a no upgrade Predator. Just newly out on the field. Taking some Brightland shots. Gotta be careful about that. Chaos Terminators, meanwhile, this might be a kill on the Farseer. Where's this Predator going? I mean, it seemed like attempting to kill the Farseer, but it's going really, really far into the Eldar base. And now it's being targeted by some Seer Council. This Predator is dead. Because here is this platoon. I don't even know if platoon is the right word here, but this herd of fire prisms. I think these fire prisms are basically what is quite possibly going to win the game for our Eldar players. I'm calling this a little bit early, but, I mean, they're doing well. I gotta say that much. They've been alive for a long time. Singularity or Eldritch? Which one's gonna be? Singularity. Yeah. So, I mean, at some point, so I think Singularity and Eldritch have the same indicator, or at least it's really, really close. But the Eldritch definitely activates a little bit faster than the Singularity. And... Oh, but here is an Eldritch somewhere. The Eldritch is gonna be here. Where's the follow-up on the Eldritch? Unfortunately, I feel like the rest of the army was a little too far away for that to really be a high-value Eldritch. It's a single-cap game. It's one victory point. Well, sorry, single cap in favor of our Eldar players. What is Cenzontotochtin floating for? He's got so many resources. Buy a Chaos Space Marine squad. Like, at this point, you could literally buy a Chaos Space Marine squad on top of a Predator. Speaking of Predators, Predator from DanielGrushin can be moving in. This Predator is level 3, so I guess the thing is, Nurgle Predators stay alive. Wow, we've actually got a Melta Raptors trying to target these fire prisms. Another attempted Imperial Abyss. Is that going to be enough? Pulls in some of the Dire Avengers who haven't retreated out of it, but it's still not even going to kill them. Alright, it did get quite a few Dire Avenger models. I still feel that wasn't a great Abyss. Hard to really fully get value. I feel like they're hoping that the Imperial Abyss will actually help them deal with the Fire Prisms, and the honest truth here is that it just isn't. So, Imperial Abyss does heavy melee damage, so technically that would do damage to vehicles. But again, most of the damage of the Imperial Abyss is still concentrated in the center, so you're still not going to do significant damage to a vehicle unless you hit them right dead center with the Imperial Abyss. But a vehicle can also just drive out of the center. So things happening in several different places. DanielGrushin looks like he's frustrated, feels like he can't do anything. So our Chaos players have a 2-to-1 cap, but, I mean, they've lost their army. You know, I really talked up how well I felt that Cenzontotochtin was doing, but I gotta kind of call him out here for honestly just doing this massive resource float, and not really just buying as many things as he could. Uses Tome of Subjugation on the Howling Banshees. They do target the Bright Lance. Did they actually wipe it? That would be crazy. They don't wipe it, but I mean, they did do a huge amount of damage. So Cenzontotochtin gets out of there. Nimmsi now going for a Land Raider Phobos. You know, I mean, they do have enough time for that, I think. Blastmaster for DanielGrushin, but that's actually just going to be the concede from our cast players. So the series has been evened up at 2-2, so that means there's only one game left, and that game will decide our series. Let's move on to Game 5.
All right, then, game number 5 in our best of 5 series between the Chaos and the Eldar. It's going to happen right now. We have Nimmsi playing as the Chaos Sorcerer, Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer, spellcasting hero with spells and control abilities. DanielGrushin, also going to be a Chaos Sorcerer. And finally, Cenzontotochtin, yet another Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer. On the other side, we've got Noisy playing as the Warp Spider Exarch, Legionator again as the Warlock, and finally Fathom, also again on the Farseer. So our 5th game of the series will be on Avensa Stronghold. Let's see how this final game will turn out. We are going to see the Farseer and one of those Chaos Sorcerers, sorry, that's actually the Warlock, engaging in one-on-one combat, but it looks like the support is going to be there. Well, actually for both players, Destructor's going to go in on the Heretics. Not quite a good shot on them, takes them down to about 80% hit points, although for Heretics, that means they don't have many hit points left. Should see a Doom Blast there to slow down the Howling Banshees, but the squad of Heretics does not get out alive. And let's see how this engagement is going to go. Chaos Space Marines are going to have to move up to support the Sorcerer. What a good Doom Bolts that was. Doing something like 70% damage, but that Sorcerer is going to have to get out of there with the support of Fathom coming in to his aid. Meanwhile, that does mean Cenzontotochtin is going to roam around this side, currently unchallenged, but he seems to be idling a little bit. Maybe he's attempting a power bash, but I don't know, maybe he's just exploring the map. I'm not sure quite what's going on. Starts getting captured here, but he is also approached by Fathom. Even stops the capture a little bit, goes for the double Heretic Worship. Meanwhile, on this side, we are going to see the Warp Spider Exarch take the garrison, which is a rather annoying position for him to be in for the Chaos players, because he'll just be in there tanking a lot of damage while doing some damage, won't bleed as long as he makes sure he doesn't die, but grenades are going to threaten him quite a bit. Actually lost a big chunk of his health from those grenades. Another volley goes in, and the Warp Spider Exarch now down to about 20% hit points. Gonna need to get out of there. Meanwhile, I think the Dire Avenger squad kind of out of position. I mean, force melee against the Heretics would be good if they actually did it, but he has still had to worry about the Chaos Space Marines there too. Doom Bolt's going to go in. Not quite a good hit on the Howling Banshees, but the Banshees decide they don't want to lose any models. Unfortunately, it's a little bit out of their control, and one of the models does go down. Meanwhile, Howling Banshees on this side already in melee, but they are going to get Doom Blasted by a squad of Heretics with a higher amount of health, so they will need to get out of there. And that also means the Dire Avengers will need to get out of there too. In fact, only one Banshee model left. That is pretty rough. That bleed is going to hurt a bit. Meanwhile, I feel like, is this Cenzontotochtin? Yeah, he's been here quite a while now. I feel like the last time I checked over here, he had this overlapping double Heretic Worship, which does mean that they're all completely infiltrated. And this is Nimmsi. Nimmsi gonna be moving over, but he does find himself getting suppressed by the Guardian Weapon team. However, Noisy does see that the Heretics are moving in, so probably anticipated a grenade barrage and decided to just move them back. May have also seen the angle from this Chaos Space Marine squad, and that Guardian Weapon team did take quite a bit of damage. So that's just kind of a, I guess I call that a soft pedal. Like, if we were playing any other game, I would just say that's a retreat, but since a retreat is an actual mechanic in this game, got to differentiate it between actually using a retreat mechanic and times when you just straight up move back. Chaos Space Marine is going to be in too much trouble there, especially with potentially double grenades going in. There is Coruscating Flame on the Heretics, but there are many ways in which oh, but there's the channeling rooms once again from, this is Legionator. Yeah, he really likes those channeling runes on the Howling Banshees, and I've kind of talked about why I do like the channeling runes. Grenade's going to go in. They actually hit most of those Heretic models. In fact, the only one left is the Aspiring Champion. So it looks like Cenzontotochtin has finally been forced off. Ranger squad out to try to sniff out some of that infiltration. And it looks like Howling... Oh, they take out a Sorcerer in retreat. But he's just going to get rezzed up by his friendly sorcerer ally. And let's take a look at the war gear upgrades we're seeing from our players. Nimmsi with the Sigil of the Rift. Haven't seen that in action yet. We did already see the coruscating flame from the Sword of Flame in action. And then Cenzontotochtin with both the Vestments of the Warp and the Sigil of the Rift. Sigil of the Rift does make sense with all of the, or like, you know, with this one Guardian Weapon team out. Sigil of the Rift is just, it is certainly an answer. And our Eldar players, Noisy with the improved targeters just to make him a little bit stronger at harassing. He'll bleed down models faster from heretic squads. Chaos Sorcerer does teleport in, tying up the Guardian Weapon team, so it can't really fire. But he is now moving out. Sorcerer does have the Doom ability on him, so just like we've seen that Legionator really likes those channeling runes, we're also seeing that the Farseer player, Fathom, really, really likes that Doombringer. As far as I remember, I feel like he's gotten that every single game in this series, and why not? I think that Doom ability is quite good. Increasing the damage that a unit will take by 30% is nothing to laugh at. So we are seeing some Noise Marines out on the field from Nimmsi. We also saw that Cenzontotochtin had some as well. The Rangers getting way too close. That should actually be a wipe on the Rangers. That is just some, I feel like, okay, no, maybe not. I feel like he's kind of lucky to get them out of there alive. Did lose only one model, could have lost two. Coruscating Flame once again on these heretics. You know, it sounds like Eldar attacking on this side. Cenzontotochtin looks like he's completely off the field. So it's going to be a Generator Bash as well as a decap on the Chaos Natural Victory Point. We are seeing them bash the Generators separately. The Guardian Weapon team targeting one. The Farseer targeting the other in ranged, which I don't think is optimal. Let me just double check. Yes, the melee DPS is quite a bit higher than the piercing DPS. Or rather, the melee DPS is quite a bit higher than the ranged DPS. Sorcerer, meanwhile, potentially in trouble. There is a Sigil of the Rift attempt, I think. Yep, Sigil of the Rift does bring in the Guardian Weapon team, displaces it, and scares it into retreating, even though there's no real follow-up to actually really threaten it. Uh-oh, but Sorcerer got knocked down. That should be another wipe on the Sorcerer. So the Sorcerer really needs to be careful against Howling Banshees, because he's not that tanky as, you know, not necessarily like a melee tank hero. Is this going to be a squad of heretics down? It is. And the Sorcerer, yeah, I mean, if he gets knocked down against a squad of Howling Banshees, like, any time, that can threaten to kill him entirely. Anyway, double Howling Banshees here. This should be a pretty quick Generator Bash. We also got triple Dire Avengers bashing the Generators as well. But one of the squads of Howling Banshees is idle. Okay, now it acquires the Generator, or rather the Node. And there's not a close enough response, or a fast enough response, from our Chaos players to do anything about this. So that will be a full Generator Bash for our Eldar players. And we are going to see an upgrade here. Tzeentch upgrade for Nimmsi. Makes sense. More Eldar Generator Bashing going to happen. He's not moving in too close, though, and I'm not quite sure why. Although we are going to see grenades go in. We are going to see also bloodletters from Nimmsi, which is actually going to have nothing to do with what's going on this side. So actually, Fathom just moves back. I felt like he might have been able to push in a little farther to actually try to take down more of those Generators. Sigil of the Rift, though, attempted to take the Guardian Weapon team, just scares it into retreating. And Bloodletters, we see that their phase shift ability even makes it so that they are not getting suppressed. Although they also weren't being targeted. Which actually, I mean, of course, phase shift basically makes them invulnerable, but I don't know for sure whether you can actually target them during that time. It's been so long, and actually I don't even really know. Falcon going to be out from Legionator. Some Tier 2 upgrades, or Tier 2 units rather. Wraithguard from Fathom, and we've seen Wraithguard at some point in these games, but sometimes their effectiveness hasn't always been fully realized. And that Falcon's starting to take some shots from the Tzeentch squads
Those Zinch squads with their Inferno Bolters will do some light damage to the Falcon, but very, very light. Not really enough to threaten it to just actually threaten to kill it. So Generator bashes are being returned, with our Chaos players actually bashing the generators on this side. Probably attempted grenades in retreat on the Blooders. Let's see how it turns out. Both grenades go out. Hits one model, takes one model. I mean, that was 2 grenades pretty much just square right on one model. Sometimes with Bloodletters, as they do have actually 300 hit points per model, it's not terribly uncommon to see attempted grenades on retreat not even get any model kills on Bloodletters. But, I mean, there you actually just had 2 grenades, like, right on one model. Triple cap for our Eldar players. Meanwhile, Zinch Chaos Space Marines shooting out of infiltration, burning down the Banshees that were trying to capture that point, and got enough damage before they were responded to. So Wraith Lord now out for Noisy. No shoulder-mounted weapon upgrade, at least not yet. And here we are going to see Fathom moving in slowly. Heretics were under infiltration, but since they were attempting the capture, they were not under infiltration anymore. And he's going for the capture again. Uh-oh. Knocks over his own Heretics. Sigil of the Rift once again does pull in the Bright Lance. Well, I have Bright Lance, actually. Wow, that's a oh, right. A full retreat because of the Bloodletter, and because the Bright Lance is already in retreat. And I guess the Wraith Guard will just be tied up by the Blood Crusher, rather. And, oh yeah, all that makes sense. So, meanwhile, Bloodletters here. They are leading the charge. At some point, they are going to need to retreat or phase out into the warp. And we are now seeing the Shuriken Cannon on Noisy's Wraith Lord. And I think our Chaos players potentially in a little bit of trouble now. Doom Bolts do go in on these Banshees that have approached. We do have 1 squad of Plague Marines, or 2 rather, but one of them's already in retreat. The other one gonna start losing models, I think, being chased down by the Howling Banshees as well as the Wraith Lord. Lucky to actually not lose a model, but those Plague Marines, like before I talked about how tanky those Bloodletters are, but man, when you've got Plague Marines with 3 models and 2,000 hit points in total, that is going to be pretty tanky individual models for a squad. Chaos players, oh, it's actually back to a 1-to-1 cap, with actually Eldar players now threatening the 2-to-1 cap soon, once these Howling Banshees complete this capture point. I think it might even be worth it for the Howling Banshees to stop the capture and attempt some kills on this Heretic squad in retreat. Maybe not, because actually, since the Dire Avengers didn't get any grenades on retreat, even the Banshees probably wouldn't have gotten the squad wipe. But I think there was a potential missed opportunity if there were grenades on that squad, and then the Howling Banshees went after it too. Could have been a wipe on that Heretic squad. Cenzontotochtin once again moving in with that Blood Crusher. Heretics, unfortunately, is dropping this. Oh, well, they did tank a little bit of damage. They're going to start tanking a lot more damage. Heretics are going to need to get out of here, or they're just tanking damage unnecessarily. They do retreat, but 1 generator does go down on this contested power node. Warp Spider Exarch once again in green cover, teleporting around, does teleport back to try to assist with dealing with the Bloodletters. And that Warp Spider Exarch now is fully upgraded. Heavy Gauge Death Spinner. I mean, it does increase his damage, but I feel at this point, like, if he had the Entangling Web, I think that actually would have been better for dealing with the Bloodletters. But, I mean, I think he wants the Heavy Gauge Death Spinner for the damage round. And then we have the Enhanced Warp Generator, just so he can teleport around more frequently, and also quite a bit farther. Oh, Falcon went down, missed that. That's kind of a shame. And actually, I mean, Fathom is really, really not having a good time of it against Cenzontotochtin's Blood Crusher at the moment. However, Eldar players having a bit of a better time of it over here, constantly pushing back the Space Marine players in these lanes. So that is Nimmsi, and I guess DanielGrushin would be in the middle. DanielGrushin moving in to assist with the flank. This could be the Wraith Lord in trouble now. We'll see. So we are seeing the Howling Banshees attempt to get someone in melee. So they choose not to go after the after the Plague Marines. Plague Marines, unfortunately, shooting their missile, I think, at the Banshees rather than the Wraith Lord, and now the Wraith Lord is out of range. And what is this exactly? A Psychic Beacon? I'm not familiar with that at all. Anyway. Please let me know if that Psychic Beacon is like some new Eldar ability that has been added. Because it doesn't even seem to have much effect. Alright, so Fire Prism now out for Legionator. My god, he's so far ahead. Fathom also getting another Fire Prism. Noisy not yet in Tier 3. So, Fire Prisms we did see in the last game. Fire Prisms were a big part of what the Eldar players were able to help them win the game. Just those. I personally believe the Fire Prism has always been a fantastic unit. We saw the rather extreme dominance it had in the game before. Just used properly, it can be incredibly difficult to deal with because of the extreme range on the Fire Prism as well as the disruption that they provide. Damage for Fire Prism is actually not bad either. Squads are getting wiped here, I believe. Yeah, I think that was a Havoc squad. Oh no, actually one Havoc model. Actually, I'm not even sure if that was the right squad. Meanwhile, over here, Blood Crusher still alive for Cenzontotochtin. There just has not been enough of a response from Fathom, even though he's now got a Fire Prism, but his Fire Prism is coming out now. I think it was just newly built, and it should be targeting the Blood Crusher very soon. And Fathom has really been suffering against Cenzontotochtin, but at this point in the game, there really should be no way that this Blood Crusher stays alive. Yeah. I'm actually surprised it even lived as long as it did, and that Fathom wasn't able to deal with it for just as long as it was around. But especially with the Blood Crusher around, that was an interesting sigil, right? But especially with the Blood Crusher around, especially with the Fire Prism around, there's really no way that a Blood Crusher should be able to survive against the Fire Prism. Again, that extreme range of the Fire Prism compared to the melee range of the Blood Crusher. Anyway, we do have the end of the game. And that will be the end of our series. Alright, I'm gonna be real honest here and I don't actually even know who won. But I think it's our Eldar players. Because I'm actually just going to base this entirely on the fact that we've got 3 Fire Prisms built and a 4th one coming, and I think just with the Fire Prisms coming out, I think our Chaos players just conceded. So, I hope you enjoyed this full 5-game Faction War series. Have a good night.